Hey guys, what's up? And today we're going to be doing a comparison of the Dart Zone Pro against the Ceda Model S. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be using the Dart Zone Pro Mark 1.1. This is a 1.0, however the 1.1 is the one that's currently available from Target. The only difference is the price point is slightly lower, the color is red, and they fixed a slight issue with the stock. Starting with the fronts of the blaster, the Dart Zone Pro has sort of a cosmetic muzzle brake, whereas the Ceda Model S has a built-in zero sort of scar barrel with a little bit of rifling. As you can see here, this piece of plastic offers about a quarter twist throughout the length of that little end piece of the barrel, so that should give your darts a little bit of spin and hopefully improve the accuracy. The Dart Zone Pro comes with this sort of vertical foregrip that has a very slight angle to it, whereas the Ceda Model S has this pump grip, which, to be honest, is quite bad. There's nothing in the back here to prevent you from your hand slipping back, so I found that you almost have to keep a finger on the front, and that's even with the stock spring. The upgraded springs, you would definitely have to replace this foregrip with something with a little more support. Because both blasters are based off of a retaliator style internal system, there is a bit of play with the prime before it actually starts engaging the spring. So with the Ceda, it's about that much, whereas the Dart Zone Pro, it's about twice as much. That's not really a big deal, but it affects how the blaster feels a bit, so I figured I would mention it. The top rails of both blasters are pretty much identical in length. They allow you to mount pretty much whatever sort of Picatinny sight you want. The Dart Zone Pro comes with an iron sight sort of system that you could just slide on top. The Ceda does not come with anything. In terms of magazines, both of these blasters come with their own sort of setup. You have the Katana mags for jet blasters, and then Dart Zone also makes their own mags. However, they are pretty much compatible with any of the aftermarket stuff. Like if you wanted to use your Talon mags or stuff like that, pretty much anything is workable, even if it takes a little slight adjustment, but for the most part, it'll all work right out of the box. Moving back a little further, you have a pretty standard mag release on both. One on the Dart Zone is a trigger style. This is more of a long shot style where you slide it back and it takes up a little less space because it's into the blaster, so that's sort of personal preference. The grip on the Dart Zone Pro has a nice rubberized texture. The one on the Ceda is sort of just the plastic. The stock on both the Dart Zone Pro and the Ceda S are both buffer tube style stocks that work with any aftermarket real steel or airsoft type designs, so it's not really an issue if you want to swap both of them out. The Dart Zone Pro has a sort of rubberized texture on the stock, which is kind of nice. The Mark 1, like I mentioned, had some issues with collapsing stocks under pressure. Mine took quite a bit, so it wasn't really an issue. However, that is supposed to be fixed in the 1.1 that is available now. The Ceda, on the other hand, has a monolithic piece of plastic, and I found it to be a bit wobbly, so I'll be replacing mine in the future. Going over the takedown function for both of these blasters, there's a slight difference. Both of them use these pins, which are equally as annoying, with these little flappy pieces that jiggle around all the time, so I still have to figure out if I could find like a shoulder bolt or something to just replace those, at least for the Dart Zone one, because I don't take it apart that much. The Ceda I might be taking apart more, so I might just remove these pins and then use like a stick or something to poke them out because the jiggling is really annoying. The Ceda is actually really easy to tear apart once you pull out these two pins. The blaster just slides apart. Then you have the front barrel assembly as well as the back plunger, and then if you squeeze the shell a little bit, that'll pop out, and then you can access the plunger. You can swap out the spring, the whole thing just pulls right out, which is very convenient for modding. One thing I did notice on mine though is that the plunger tube is like extremely dry. There's no lubricant in there, so before we do a firing comparison, just to be fair to both blasters, I will be lubricating mine, but you may have to look out for that on yours. To disassemble the Dart Zone Pro, you need to remove the two pins, as well as these two thumb screws which go into the bolt sled. Now once the front pulls off, it makes it a lot easier to store. However, you can't access the internals as easily like you can with the Ceda. You still have to remove all the screws, and then there's some tabs as well that you have to work with to get to the internals. Before we go into a performance test, I would just like to comment on the build quality of the two blasters. It's sort of in a different league, but the Dart Zone Pro the tolerancing and the just little touches that they put on, like the rubberized grips and stuff like that, add a lot to the blaster, whereas the Ceda feels much cheaper and the tolerancing is objectively worse. So you can see with like here, with the adapter for the Talon mags in, there's a lot of loose play in the mag well, and with the Dart Zone Pro, if you do the same thing, it doesn't even move. You get a little bit of vertical, just because I'm sure there's a little play where it releases, but like with this one, you can sort of move it around back and forward and up and down, so it's a little looser. And then also with the Ceda, there's some issues with the shell, like the grip makes a lovely sound, and you can see the end, especially up here, moving back and forth when you wiggle it. And just a lot of little things like that where the quality of build with this is just lower. It's also a cheaper blaster, so you would expect that. I'll go into my thoughts more at the end. I just wanted to point out that I'm not hating on the Ceda. I just want to point out where the flaws in the design are. So to make this as a fair comparison as possible, because they both do come with their own individual darts, I'm going to be using the most popular stuff out right now. So I'm going to be using Talon mags as my magazines with Worker Gen 3 darts, just to see how that goes. I'll be using new darts for both. I'll put a 15 round mag through the chronograph, and then we can compare results. So the Ceda with the Gen 3 Worker darts gave us a high of 156, a low of 146, and an average of 152 feet per second. So my Dart Zone Pro results were a little all over the place. We will see a high of 175, a low of 100, and an average right around 151. The performance of these two blasters were pretty comparable with the Worker Gen 3s. I know the Dart Zone Pro doesn't like those as much, but in terms of comparison, I think it's the most fair because that's what most people have been using. So both of these out of the box perform pretty similar. Actually, if anything, the Ceda was more consistent, being that it had a very small variation, whereas the Dart Zone Pro had some pretty high highs, but also some pretty low lows, so you might not get as consistent performance with those Worker darts. If that's what you're using, you can buy the Dart Zone darts, but they don't seem to be circulating as much because they're only selling it in the pack with the large and the half dart in the same package, so if you're going to be using one or the other, it really doesn't make sense to buy both. In terms of price comparison, there's a couple ways I think you can look at this. Right out of the box, if you wanted to buy the Dart Zone Pro, you get about $150 for the Mark 1.1 from Target, and then the Ceda generally retails around $89 in the US. But then by the time you upgrade the grip and the stock, if you were so inclined, you're going to be spending a bit more, so I think you have to consider that as well. So I think both blasters definitely have a place in our hobby. I would say that it's obviously great that a lot of people are getting into that low price point of entry where you could just pick either one of these blasters up out of the box, show up to a game, or if you want to get someone new involved in the hobby, these would be great blasters to start them off with. The Dart Zone Pro, I feel like, is more ready to go right out of the box between the foregrip being better and it just including a little more in the box and having a little bit of a nicer feel. I think especially if you're getting someone into the hobby that's not going to be modding it, as this blaster can be a little bit more tricky to mod. Both of them are very moddable and use a lot of the same style parts because they're both based off of that Retaliator style blaster. However, the Dart Zone Pro is a little more finicky to mod because it has a lot of little plastic tabs you have to be very careful with, and it's a bit more of a pain to remove. So I would say if you're not modding it, this is better right out of the box. The build quality is there, and it's just ready to pick up and use. The Ceda, I think, is a good platform if you're going to mod the blaster because it's cheaper. And also, you could fix a lot of the problems with the blaster, like the stock is a little wobbly. You could just replace it with any buffer tube style stock. They make grips that slide on over the existing grip that work with real steel and airsoft, so you can get like a rubberized grip that just slips on over here. That might help with the handle. And the foregrip, there are a bunch of aftermarket parts available that you can swap it out with. So if you're willing to put those aftermarket parts on, it will increase the price point obviously, but you can fix a lot of the problems and have a very easily modifiable blaster to use. So I'm pretty happy with both of my purchases for these. I think that they fulfill slightly different parts like I mentioned. I'll be keeping my Dart Zone Pro pretty stock for now and just using it as a loaner blaster for people that are new to the hobby. I think it's a great introductory blaster. And then the Ceda, I'm going to be picking up some aftermarket parts for. I'll probably be making my own grip just because I like doing that sort of thing. And I have an aftermarket stock that I bought with it just because I needed to get the free shipping. So I can see myself picking up a lot of aftermarket parts for this blaster. I know I need to get a metal bolt sled, a higher spring, stuff like that where it'll just be a little bit beefier in terms of performance. I'm going to be using it at 250 FPS cap games, so I plan on getting it as close to that as possible. But anyway guys, those are my thoughts on the blaster. I'm curious to see what you have to say, so let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you own either one of these blasters? Do you own both of them? Would you like to buy one or the other? And then like I mentioned earlier, I'll be doing some mods on the Ceda, so I'm sure you'll see this guy in a future video. As always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video.